Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Long time no see. Welcome to the Lake Country Clean Waters quarterly meeting, the first of the year on January 19th, 2022. We're excited to have you here. Lots of big announcements tonight, and we have some really great presenters. So I'm excited to get into it, and we can get right into the agenda here. And so today we're going to do a quick introduction. We have some new board members. In fact, we have like half of a new board. So we're really excited to introduce our new board members, and we'll share some updates as well as have a couple activities just to get everyone kind of on the same page and get people kind of used to the meeting. I like to be a little bit interactive with how we hold the meetings here. Then after that, we have Amy Kretlow and Patrick Siwula. They are both from the Wisconsin DNR, and they will be presenting on the Aquatic Invasive Species Plan for 2022. After they present, we'll have Paul Skawinski present on Citizen Lakes Monitoring Network and how you can get involved on your property, on your lake or river or stream. So we're really excited for that. I did want to take a minute to just introduce our board. A lot of people on the call here know many of our board members, but some of you don't. And so I wanted to just make sure we all are on the same page. So we have some existing board members. We have 4 of them up at the top here. And then we have actually 4 new members. Most of them are on the call. Some of them weren't able to make it tonight, but if they are on the call, I'll ask you guys to be able to just give a 30-second introduction about yourself, how you've become a board member for Lake Country Clean Waters, and maybe where you're at in the state and what lake, river, or stream you might be living on or representing. And so Joyce, we can start with you.
Hi, I'm Joyce. I'm the treasurer of Lake Country Clean Waters. I have been with the organization since its inception in 2015. I came to the organization because I was involved with the Pewaukee Lake Water Ski Club's Lake Country Clean Water Festival. And out of that festival is where this organization grew. So I'm no longer climbing pyramids in a water ski show, but I'm very happy to be involved with this great organization and to serve as treasurer.
Thanks, Joyce. Susan?
You're welcome.
Did you say Susan?
Yes.
I'm Susan Buchanan. I'm the secretary of Lake Country Clean Waters, and I'm also the executive director of Tall Pines Conservancy, a land trust working in Lake Country to protect land, primarily farmland. We're major partners in Lake Country Clean Water, and we're also major partners in the Oconomowoc Watershed Protection Program. I've been involved with the organization since its inception, as Joyce has, which was in 2015, and just happy to see the organization growing and thriving. Thanks for everybody coming tonight.
Thanks, Susan. And Caroline, if you want to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Okay, I'm Caroline Joyce, and I live in Heartland, Wisconsin, in the beautiful Lake Country Clean Waters area. I was brought on the board basically by Susan Buchanan, who I had kind of worked with when I was designing programming and running programs, science, water-related ones for the School for Freshwater Sciences and the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. And so I've been on the board for about a year and a half, and I've loved every minute of it. I'm meeting all sorts of new people. I see Paul speaking tonight, and I'm on his committee for the Wisconsin Lakes Conference and his work with citizen scientists. So I'm happy to be here tonight with you, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to hear.
Great. Don, I'm not sure if Don's on the call yet. He said he would be running a little bit late. I think he's teaching a class, so we can skip him for now. Denise as well wasn't able to make it tonight, but I think Alan is here. So Alan? I'm looking for Alan. Alan isn't here either. Is Tom here? Bueller. Bueller. Tom. Nope. Okay, Jerry, you're here. Oh, and I think you're on mute. Um,
Got it.
there you go.
Yeah, I'm
Nice.
cool. Thank you. I've been involved with North Lake Management District since it started. And I've been the chairman for the last 12 years of the Lake Management District. And we've been lucky enough to be on North Lake since 1981 when we came out part-time, and my wife and my son got the bug and things worked out right, and we were able to come on North Lake full-time in 1988. I have a financial background for education and also in work. Myself and my wife are retired, and we spend part-time in Wisconsin and part-time in Florida.
Great. Thanks, Jerry. As we move forward, if any of the other board members come on, we can introduce them, but otherwise you'll just meet them at the next quarterly meeting. So we're really excited for the new board members. It's just really great to see the organization growing and really awesome people coming onto the board. So thanks for the introductions, everyone. Oh, and then I was like, oh, I should probably introduce myself too, in case people don't know who I am. My name is Brad Steckert. I am the director for Lake Country Clean Waters. The way I got here was I was the aquatic invasive species coordinator for Washington and Waukesha counties after interning under Paul Skawinski, actually. And then I ended up in finance and moving on to a career in government technology, but also continuing with my love for lakes and lake conservation. I wanted to continue being involved in water conservation. And so I lined up with Lake Country Clean Waters, helping them with some consulting. And the way that landed was I am now the director of Lake Country Clean Waters. I'm also a local boat buster. So sometimes on the weekends, you might find me out at the boat launch, helping out the Clean Boats, Clean Waters people. And if you really want to have some fun, you can Google or YouTube Boat Busters and see a really fun video of my interns and I a few years ago making this video called Boat Busters. It's a parody of the actual Ghostbusters song. So it's pretty fun. All right, we're going to skip this. And then, so what we're going to do next is go to something that you can do on your screen. If you're on a computer, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to say view options. It should be on the top of the screen somewhere up here. And if you click down, you should see an option that says annotate. There's a little pencil icon there that says annotate. And then you should see a text or draw or all these other options. But if you click on that text or draw, what I want to do on the next page is just write down what organization do you represent? Are you with a lake district, a lake association? Maybe you're Susan and you're with Tall Pines Conservancy. You could go and write any of that. So once again, the instructions there are to go to view options and then annotate. And then you can use that text, or if you are really feeling risky, you can try and draw and actually write out your lake organization name. What you can do here, and then, so this page is blank because you can just go anywhere on the page and write your organization. So if you're Nate Rice, you might want to write Silver Lake. Awesome. Oh, yep. All right, nice job, Dee. Gerald, all right. John, Okachi Lake. Moose Lake. A lot of people are choosing this spot on the board. You could choose anywhere on the board to go. Tall Pines, nice Susan. Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, if you don't want to annotate, you can always write it in the chat too. And while everyone's writing their organizations in on the annotate or in the chat, I do have the chat open. If you have questions through the entire process, please feel free to write your questions in the chat, whether it's during my presentation, Amy's presentation, or Paul's presentation. We'll save those questions and then we'll have them answer them at the end. All right, Zofia with Sewer Pack. I need to talk to you about some Sewer Pack stuff. I love this. Look at this. Black LaBelle, Citizen Lake Monitoring Network, Tom Steinbach, OWPP. Lisa Conley, risking it all, writing with her mouse. Black LaBelle, I love it. All right, we got Ed in the chat from Lower Nemaben Lake Association. Ed, we were using your website as an example of a nice website today. Sandy couldn't get into the shared screen. Sandy with Lake Oconomowoc. Oneida County, very cool. And what I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to take a screenshot of this because I think it's awesome to see who we all have on the calls and who we're working with. And Jerry's on his way trying to write too.
I'll say trying.
I also see Ken Hebby's on the call from Lake 5. Really good group. I love that we're getting Washington County, Waukesha County, Oneida County. We're getting all kinds of people on the call. NLMD. All right. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a screenshot of this. Thanks everyone for participating. We really appreciate it. It's fun to do this kind of stuff. And then one more thing that I want to do is, and this is going to be, I'm going to clear these annotations here. Clear that. Oh, I'm annotating. Okay, and then everyone, I'm gonna want everyone to come off camera and take a group photo together. So if you're on camera, stay on camera, and if you're off, I'm putting you guys probably can't see it, but I'm putting everyone on the screen so we can take a photo. And I'm gonna have to take two because there's 2 pages of people. So, all right, so on this page, all right, Amy. Hi, Amy, it's good to see your face. Sue, Ginny, Gerald, Lisa. All right. Okay, here's one picture. Everybody smiles on 3. 1, 2, 3. Nice. And then next page. All right. You probably don't know if you're on the first page or the second page, so we're gonna smile one more time. 1, 2, 3. Nice. Okay, cool. Thanks for participating, everybody. That's just fun. All right, so I wanted to go over some 2021 accomplishments. This slide looks really text heavy, but we're not going to go through everything. But so last year, I just wanted to share kind of what we were able to do because this is the new year and kind of, we got to sum up what we did last year. So we had 3 quarterly meetings at our Healthy Lakes Conference, and we had that in person. We also presented at the Lake Country Clean Water Festival, which was fun. We just had a table there. All in all, we had over 150 attendees. We had over 20 experts and professional presenters combined between all of the presentations, 15 different water-related conservation topics that we got to cover. So that's really cool. And then I have some highlighted presentations. We had Alan Barrows, who's now a board member, and we had Jeannie Schur talking about purple loosestrife, the new AIS coordinator for Washington and Waukesha counties, as well as Heidi Bunk. We had Dr. Chris Wright come to our conference and explain just all about water and the basics about water, and it's really interesting. shall look at starry stonewort from a science perspective in Wisconsin. And then we also had Jim Ketter present at our Healthy Lakes Conference about Silver Lake in Washington County from a lake person's perspective. So that was really cool. And then we had Jerry Hine and Tim Tyre, who are doing the North Lake Management Study, drone and wave study, which is just an awesome study that we're going to continue to keep monitoring and probably have them at our next quarterly meeting on where they're at with that study. That's a red box. Okay. So we have had 8 lake groups donate. We've had 20 individuals donate and 1 foundation donate this year. So we're really excited about that. We run completely on donations. And so the donations basically have been scraping us by every single meeting, which has been really great because we can continue doing these meetings. We do this also through partnerships with Tall Pines Conservancy, Ozaki Watershed Protection Program, Wisconsin Lakes, DNR, and many other partners as well as everyone who's donated. So we have 1 part-time employee and a volunteer board of directors. So we have an announcement. Speaking of running completely on donations, we're inviting your lake organization or river organization to sponsor an event. So you can sponsor one of our quarterly meetings. You can sponsor our Healthy Lakes Conference. And this year, we're actually also hosting the Lake Country Clean Water Festival out on Pewaukee Lake. So you can sponsor that as well. If you're interested in sponsoring any of these, your lake organization would be, displayed everywhere, sponsored by this lake organization. If it's a quarterly meeting, we would kind of allow you to have some time to talk about your lake organization for a little while. And we're really excited to hopefully get some sponsorships to sponsor just like a single quarterly meeting or part of the Healthy Lakes Conference. That we would think that would be really cool. So we'll continue to seek out sponsorships for that. If you're interested, you can let me know. If you're interested now, you can let me know in the chat, or you can always just send me an email too. So please consider asking your organization to donate, sponsor, or make a personal donation. And we also have our lake and river group annual sponsorship structure. So we have all the way from watershed down to lake, river, stream, or the puddle category. And you can donate any amount within this, and you get more things during each of our meetings for what you decide to donate. So we just encourage you to donate whatever you can to help us move along. So our next meeting is our Healthy Lakes Conference on June 3rd. And so we'll need some help, getting funded completely for that to get there. So please consider talking to your lake group, making a personal donation. They're all tax deductible because we're a 501c3. So got to always plug that. And then we're excited to have people apply for this year's Lake and River Organization Annual Recognition Award. In 2020, North Lake Management District won it. In last year's Silver Lake Management District won the award. And that's Nate Rice from Silver Lake Management District. 2022, it's up for grabs right now. So it could be your lake or river organization. So you can apply for the Lake and River Annual Recognition Award at our website, lakecountrycleanwaters.org. There's a simple, it's like a Word document to fill out and submit to our website. And you can do that if you have been exhibiting some cool stuff on your lake and want the award this year. So what the award is it's a paddle. Your name of your lake district or lake organization or river organization gets engraved into one of the squares, and the paddle is actually passed around from organization to organization. And on top of that, you get a plaque that you can keep. The last thing I have to say before we get to Amy is to mark your calendars. So the next thing we have is the Lake Country Clean Waters quarterly meeting. That's Wednesday, April 20th at 6 p.m. That will be virtual. Then we have the Healthy Lakes Conference, which is Friday, June 3rd. We have the Lake Country Clean Waters Festival, which is Saturday, June 25th. So it's going to be a busy June. And then we have the Healthy Lakes. I don't know why this is Healthy Lakes Conference. We have our last LCCW quarterly meeting on Wednesday, September 14th. All right. So that's all I have to say. We can get going with our presentations. So first, I'll introduce two people. We have Amy Kretlow. So she's the statewide AIS coordinator. And Amy, correct me, but it's a fairly new role for you. This role, not the role in the DNR. But Amy will be presenting on recent structural changes within the DNR and current goals to tackle aquatic invasive species. Amy's worked in the AIS program since 2014, doing all kinds of different things from early detection monitoring to point intercept surveys to going to pet stores and talking about organisms and trade. I've worked with her personally a lot on starry stonewort efforts, and she's a former CWISC, Southeastern Wisconsin Invasive Species Consortium board advisor. So with that, I will stop sharing and Amy will, oh, actually just kidding. I'm going to keep sharing for one more second because I want to also introduce Patrick Siwula, who I've not yet met personally, but I'm excited to. He's the Southeast Region AIS coordinator. He is in Southeastern Wisconsin, he's your regional point of contact. He's going to be focusing and specializing in AIS monitoring, in grant assistance and coordination, and he is also a CWISC and a LISMA board advisor. So now I will stop sharing and allow you guys to share your screen. Oh, and
This is the fun part when I'm getting my screen shared.
yeah, right.
Let's see. There it is. I'm hoping this is the right screen.
All right, looks good.
All right. Just get myself here. I apologize. I'm getting myself ready. So then that way, oh, please do not tell me my program's going to close. I'm sorry. Something just popped up on my computer. So hopefully it doesn't interrupt me. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Kretlow. As Brad said, I am the newer AIS statewide coordinator for Wisconsin DNR. I just started this role actually in August of this past year. I have been working with the DNR since 2014, and I started as a limited term employee and have just kind of worked hard and worked up to this point. So I've gotten to be able to get a lot of experiences in invasive species because all my work has always been around invasive species. So it's been one way or another dealing with either organisms in trade or aquatic invasive species. I'm happy to present to you guys today in my new role as the statewide AIS coordinator. And what I just want to kind of present to all of you is our AIS program and moving forward, because it's really an exciting time here in the DNR with our AIS program. I'm fortunate of coming in at this time. Yeah, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself because it's very exciting. So I'll just go on to this next slide. So a few things that we are changing in our AIS program is we have gone to a 5 regional AIS staff approach, and we are looking at AIS through a pathways approach. And we have a newer program called the Lake Monitoring and Protection Network, our LMPN program. So I'm just going to go a little more in depth on these 3 subjects. So starting the fall of this year, we had a rollout in the state where we were able to hire on 2 new full-time AIS staff on the west side of the state. And so now we actually, throughout the state, we have a 5 regional AIS staff, which is really exciting because in the past, we've really only had 3 AIS coordinators that were 100% AIS within the DNR. And now we have, with us being able to hire on these 2 other regional coordinators, we get to have these more stability with staff, because on the west side of the state, they were limited term employees and they were only 50% of the time aquatic invasive species. So we had a lot of turnover. So now with this new model, we're able to have more of a stability in our staff. With this rollout, we've also gone through a process of really assigning roles and responsibilities throughout the state. That it's a work in progress, but we're getting there. And just trying to figure out who's going to be doing what. And, it's real exciting. We're finally just getting it on paper and figuring out how to move our AIS program forward. And with this new rollout too, it's a lot more now consistency around the state, which is really exciting. And one task that I've been really working on is just trying to work on our consistency of communications between our regional staff. So that way we have more of a more consistent model, a more consistent messaging that we can talk about throughout the state. We're using new technologies on trying to figure out how we can communicate better as a team. I'm learning, I'll be honest, I came from a field staff background, so I'm using technology and I'm learning technology, and I'm passing that on to our team on better ways of us communicating together. With the consistency, we're doing more consistent models of training of new staff and partners throughout the state where we're working together as a team. And that's the last point here is working together as a team. That's one thing since I started this position, and we've been able to hire on these 5 AIS positions, 100% AIS positions, I have been so fortunate. I have a great team. I've always, when I worked in my last position as a regional person, I had a great team with partners and stuff, and I'm so fortunate I'm getting to take that model of a team and moving it into a statewide approach now. So another big change that we're doing within the DNR when it comes to aquatic invasive species is we are looking at more of a pathway approach now. We do have a Wisconsin management plan that we do follow, and we have 3 goals that really aim how we do our work in Wisconsin. And I do have goals 2 and 3 kind of grayed out because it's containing the spread of invasive species and controlling existing populations. We do pretty darn good at that part already. And, between our monitoring and just working with control and just, that's something that we've always really had a good focus on. So we're really moving forward. We're really starting to work on goal 1. And with that, we're doing a pathways approach. And with this pathways approach, it's exciting because we're really trying to be more proactive than reactive when it comes to invasive species. So we're actually looking at different pathways. And in our management plan, we have 7 pathways that are laid out. And underneath those 7 pathways, there's actually a bunch of little sub pathways. And as you saw in the map, there's 5 of us. So we're doing the best. We're trying to divide and conquer the best we can on these pathways. But I haven't read the 4 that we really kind of are focusing on. And we're really focusing on organisms in trade, recreational activities and service providers, canals, dams, and diversions, and maritime commerce. So those are we're in this approach, we're looking at different ways of stopping the invasives from even coming into the state. So another program that we're really starting to focus, what we are really moving towards, is our lake monitoring and protection network. And with this new program, so in the past we had a grant program, and in that grant program, the counties would apply for a grant and they would get a grant accepted for maybe for a position for 3 years or 2 years, however much they applied for that grant. And as you can see, we have the 72 counties in our state. It got very competitive for this grant process, and we only had so much money that we were able to give out to the grant program. And unfortunately, there would be, somebody would build up a really great program in a county, and then the next year that they had to apply for a grant, they just maybe weren't, because it was so competitive, they just maybe didn't get that grant accepted for that year. So then you had a county where you had a great program, but you just didn't have the funding for a year and you had to wait to reapply. So we were reassessing our grant program, and we started looking into this new approach where it's a lake monitoring protection network. And in this approach, we actually take that grant money, and I can't go into specifics on how they divvy it up. They have all these, logarithms, and there's people that know how to do that part better than I did. Like I say, I'm a good staff person and communicator, but when it comes to the logarithms and how they divvy that part up, I can't answer those kinds of questions, but I can let you know that we do have a way that we do split this money up between all the counties. And that way each county will know, they know that they're getting that certain amount of money coming into their county each year to try to have more of a consistency of knowing for their program. So we did start this program in 2021. And as you can see in the map on the left, we did have some still of the old grant program. And it was very, that kind of, transition year. And then I apologize. This is from October 11th. It's still pretty much the same coverage as I've looked at more recently, but there is more up in that northwest part of the state. There is still a few of the legacy grant program going on, but a lot of our counties have opted to come into our LMPM program. So it's very exciting to see that we're getting this actual coverage throughout the state now. And within this program, there are core activities that the counties are asked to do. And every year they go through with this, here's a list of just kind of some of the core activities that we ask, that they can do for the year. And to be honest, we're not expecting the county to go through and check off all these activities. That's a lot of activities to try to get done in a year. But so we work closely with these counties when they do sign up for their LMPM program to really just try to focus on what's important for that area. And with the LMPM program, and I just kind of wanted to highlight, I mean, this is 2020 numbers. We still don't have all our 2021 numbers in yet from this last year for our monitoring vets, but with COVID, it was such a bad year. And between when we were starting our LMPM program and just some of the grants and through the DNR, I just kind of wanted to really give a kudos on this slide between our partners and citizens and DNR staff. We still, I mean, just with so many precautions that we had to have within the DNR ourselves in 2020, we had a late start on our field season. We didn't even know if we were able to go out due to COVID that year. But I mean, we ended up having over 1,000 different monitoring events that happened in 2020. So I just really wanted to pull a kudos out there for all the monitoring that did happen that year. And that was a difficult year. So it's really exciting just seeing how the citizens and partners in DNR work together with our AIS monitoring. So with that, I was just kind of giving a really brief, quick overview though of some of our, what's new within the DNR and our AIS program. We're just evolving into this more statewide approach and becoming more consistent through the state. And, our messaging is going to be more consistent. And it's just, for me, I'm very excited and I'm so happy to be in this position at this time and really helping move this program forward. I'm going to actually just turn it over to Patrick because he has been nice enough to agree to join me in this talk tonight, because I was actually Patrick's position right before I got this job. So I wanted to have Patrick to take a chance to introduce himself to all of you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Amy. Can I get a confirmation everyone can hear me okay? All
Yep.
right. Excellent. Well, yeah. So as Amy mentioned, we have our new kind of 5 regional coordinator model. You can see on the map here, I'm your guy for Southeast Wisconsin. So it's, it's great to be able to talk to you all today. I've got some good history in Waukesha County, actually, I'll talk about in a little bit. So I'm based out of Plymouth, same as where Amy was based out of. Although, COVID times, I'm working at home quite a bit as well, which would be Grafton for me, Zaki County. And so as you can see, Southeast region is pretty large. I've got 15 counties that I cover in the region. It's the most populated area of the state. And so there's quite a bit to be done and quite a lot of stuff I'm still getting up to speed on, but really excited to be in the position. It's been great so far, and there's just a lot of really exciting things happening with our AIS program in general. So Amy, why don't you go to the next slide, please? A little bit about me. So I started at the DNR in late October of this past year, 2021. So I've been on board for about 3 months now, still getting a crash course in everything DNR, but it's going really well so far. Prior to that, I worked for Sheboygan County as the county AIS coordinator for about a year there. And prior to that, I worked in private consulting, environmental consulting in the Milwaukee area, doing a wide variety of different projects, a lot of contamination investigations, remediation, surveys, all sorts of different things. Got my undergrad degree at La Crosse. I studied environmental science, and I did my master's at UW-Milwaukee School of Freshwater Sciences. Really liked my time there, and as I mentioned, I've got some deep roots in Waukesha County and Lake Country in general. I grew up in New Berlin, learning how to fish on many of the lakes in the area. In grad school, I actually worked a booth at the Clean Waters Festival on the beach there at Pewaukee Lake. And so I'm definitely pretty invested in the area. It's really actually fun for me to be able to, talk to groups like you guys and be able to share some of that because, I'm from this area too, and I really feel really strongly and passionate about the water resources and want to do whatever I can to help us all, be good stewards of the environment and all of that. Why don't we go next slide, Amy? So a little bit more about just, my role, it's very similar to what Amy was working on, but there are some things that are shifting as we continue to evolve our programs and kind of learn how this new model with our 5 coordinators and the LMPN program, how that's going to look, as we get more and more into it. I'll just highlight some of the main things that I'll likely be working on within the Southeast region. Obviously, AIS monitoring is a big one. We do both baseline monitoring, but more of what my position is geared towards is especially response monitoring. So, when the next big bad purple polka dotted, whatever you might have, I stole that one from Heidi Bunk, shows up, then, I'll go out and I'll help coordinate response efforts to monitor within the lake itself, how much it might be. If it's spread to other nearby lakes, we have a communication and verification protocol we go through, and just kind of being the spearhead for those types of efforts and responses within all of Southeast region. There's pretty good amount of communication, coordination, and logistics, especially if something new is to be found, a new species, for example. I am taking on the organisms and trade pathway as a responsibility of Amy when she was in the position. So now it's going to fall to me as well, the Southeast region coordinator, which, to me, it makes sense. Again, it's the most populous area of the state, quite a few pet stores, and quite a few ways for unwanted invasive species to make their way into our natural systems if we don't keep tabs on them. So that's something I'll be looking at. We're actually going to be starting up some meetings again soon to look at some pet store monitoring protocols where we can get folks actually out in the field, visiting pet stores and, taking logs, making sure that they're not selling anything that is an invasive species and could potentially make its way out and escape. Obviously, I'm a point of contact for the region. So, I'm on the website for questions, anything related to AIS. Those come to me, or oftentimes general questions, and I can help direct folks to the right place to get answers that they might need. And as part of that, I also do some grant assistance. So for an example, we offer early detection and response grants for new populations of invasive species, which is something I would likely be involved with if that was something that your group ended up pursuing. Part of my regional duties also include, record management in order to keep all of our databases and maps and websites showing accurate information regarding invasive species. Someone's got to do that. So some of that falls to me, as well as some of our LTE staff, to make sure all of our data is in order in a timely fashion and all that kind of stuff, as well as outreach and education, kind of like what we're doing right now. Amy mentioned a little bit, but so the Lake Monitoring and Protection Network is still fairly new, but that's a really pretty big part of my duties, is kind of being that point person for all of our county partners within the region to go to for day-to-day guidance, training, relevant updates on the programs, delivering supplies, general, counsel or advice or what have you, for folks that whatever they need, that's what I'm here for. Really fortunate, Southeast region, we are almost essentially totally covered by the LMPN. We've got 6 partner agencies covering 14 of the 15 counties. Ozaukee County is the only one that currently is not part of the program, but we are hoping to bring them into the fold sooner than later. Next slide, Amy, please. Just wanted to shout out a little bit more about the organisms and trade work. I did just talk about it a little, but really trying to emphasize, as Amy mentioned, that we're looking at this pathways approach and we're really going full steam ahead on this. And the responsibility of the Southeast coordinator, myself, is organisms and trade. And so those efforts are going to be continuing. And yeah, I don't really think I have much more else to say about that, but definitely happy to answer any questions if folks have them. I think that's essentially it. I think we got one more slide here, Amy, but definitely happy to take any questions. If anyone has any for myself, for Amy, questions about the programs. I think I saw a couple in the chat here.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Amy. Really awesome. That's super exciting. I love the 5 coordinator strategy. I think that's going to be really good. And then I know the Lake Monitoring and Protection Network was in discussion for years. I mean, even before I left as the AIS coordinator is being talked about, but it's still strategizing and stuff. So I have a question. Is it 14 different coordinators, or is it just a few different coordinators covering multiple counties?
Yeah, definitely. So it's kind of a mixed bag. We have some single county partners where the county will take the allocation themselves, and then they'll have their own staff person run the program just within that one county. So like Sheboygan is a great example of that. But then we have other groups where they have multiple counties that they cover. So Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance, for example, covers 5 counties that actually span my region as well as Northeast region. So it's kind of just a mixed bag. It kind of really depends. Lots of the counties have great relationships with some of the nonprofits, such as, a Fox Wolf or some of the RC&Ds, and other counties just prefer to, take the money and staff it themselves.
Cool. Thank you. Kelly had a question to Amy, and that is, what can I as a kayak paddleboard rental concessionaire at a state park do to prevent aquatic invasive species? They have a sign at the launch, but was wondering if you had any other ideas.
Oh, yes. I mean, you have the sign at the launch. I think that another idea would really be helpful is even just having the tools to help clean off the kayaks. We do have, and I believe Washington and Waukesha are really big on having the signs with the tools that are there. If it is possible, I don't know how busy your launch is or anything, but just being able to have a Clean Boats, Clean Waters person interacting with the public when they come in on your busy times. I really do like that face to face. I think that really helps with just trying to teach people about preventing of spreading of AIS from lake to lake. And I mean, I can always, off the top of my head, those are the first things that came to my, thoughts. Patrick, maybe you have some more ideas, but I can always try to think of some more and let you know.
Yeah, messaging, I would say, just general, being able to let people know what good practices are, and I don't know, maybe prompts. We have brochures and things like that. If you're interested, that might be not a bad idea either.
Yeah, I really do like the tools though, so that way it's accessible for them to be able to do, use them.
Definitely. Patrick, Tom is asking, we have people who come to us who want to volunteer. Is there a need for staffing boat launches, and is this something we could direct them to?
Yeah, absolutely there is. I think you're probably referring to like Clean Boats, Clean Waters type efforts, right? Staffing. Yeah, absolutely. The more the merrier is for volunteers, especially in programs like that. I would just say, before folks go out and do staff the boat launches, they should go through the training process for Clean Boats, Clean Waters. There's a couple options for that. Either, the local county coordinator, whichever county you happen to be in, should be, putting on some trainings, likely should be putting on some trainings depending on what their exact agreement says. But I believe there also will likely be some statewide Clean Boats, Clean Waters trainings. I'm not sure if Amy or maybe Paul know about that. I think we started doing that during the COVID times here, obviously, to help, ensure people can get safe access to the training. But I think a good place to start would be to get with your county coordinator and see what they may have already in the books. And you probably could hook up with a training. There's obviously other, if you really want to go into it, there's grants you can apply for Clean Boats, Clean Waters to run on your own. If you're interested in that type of stuff, definitely feel free to reach out and we can get you the right information to help make those decisions.
Awesome. Good answer. And good question. My last question.
Definitely.
My last question is for Patrick. Hey, do you want to come back to the Lake Country Clean Waters Festival and work a booth this summer?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, COVID and schedule willing, sure. Yeah.
Nice. Get back to old times. Perfect.
Yeah, I love that beach. That'd be great.
Awesome. Great. Well, I can,
Oh, I see
Is there
Nate's message here too. I'll take your info, Nate. Yeah.
oh, I didn't see Nate's message. Oh, maybe it was private.
Oh, it's just a direct, yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Amy or Patrick? We have a couple minutes, so if before we get to Paul, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask them.
Well, Brad, I would just add to Tom's question to Patrick that they could also do AIS monitoring at the landing through Citizen Lake Monitoring Network. So not just watercraft inspection, but you could also survey the landing area for aquatic invasives. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes.
I didn't want to step on your toes for
Yeah, I
that
know,
one,
that's like
Paul.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I can't believe I neglected to mention that. So thank you.
And snapshot day, don't forget that.
And
Yes,
snaps, yeah.
I
The
know
list
there's
goes on and on.
There is
Yeah.
so much that we could, I mean, for citizens helping out, there's so much that we could, help get people involved with.
That was a perfect transition. And are you guys seeing my screen with Paul on it? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, Paul, that's perfect transition. Paul is the Citizen Lakes Monitoring Network educator at the University of Wisconsin Lakes Extension. So Paul's going to actually talk today about exactly that, how you can volunteer, what you can do to get involved with the water conservation on your lake, river, or property. Paul and I go way back. As I said before, I actually studied under Paul as an intern at Golden Sands RC&D way back in the day, and learned a lot of my plant knowledge from him. So I owe a lot to Paul when it comes to knowing about aquatic plants. It's pretty exciting. But he actually wrote the book on aquatic plants of the Upper Midwest. I think it's on its 4th edition now. Yeah, so that's exciting. And Paul also teaches aquatic plant taxonomy at UW Stevens Point and is the president of the Central Wisconsin chapter of Wild Ones. So with that, Paul, I will transfer it back to you. I'll stop sharing here and let you go ahead and share.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brad. You are seeing my screen, I assume?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So thanks for the introduction, Brad. As Brad said, I'm the statewide educator for the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network. So my main role is coordinating that network as a whole at the statewide level and making sure that DNR staff and county staff and volunteers, all these different groups are conducting similar types of surveys, collecting similar data so they can all be considered together. And I help a lot of volunteers understand their lakes better, whether that's the plant community or invasive species or the water quality of the lake. It's really a fun position for me. I love meeting all the different volunteers and different lake organizations and getting to see all the different lakes across the state. And as Brad said, I'm based out of UW Stevens Point, working for the Extension Lakes program and then teaching for the College of Natural Resources as well. So this Citizen Lake Monitoring Network and Extension Lakes are part of this big collaboration we call the Wisconsin Lakes Partnership. Many of you are probably familiar with the name or with the Wisconsin Lakes Partnership Convention, which happens every year. Caroline brought it up a little bit earlier. So the partnership is really this big collaboration between the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, Extension Lakes, and all the citizens involved with lake conservation and lake monitoring across the state, and their large citizen group, which is called Wisconsin Lakes. And Mike Engelson is the executive director for that group. And it serves as the large statewide lake advocacy organization in the state. And Citizen Lake Monitoring is just a little piece of that. It's been around for a long time, as you can see. 1986 is when the network started. And when this idea came out, we looked for volunteers to participate in this pilot project of volunteers monitoring water quality. And 126 people stepped up and said they would love to collect water quality, water clarity data specifically on 113 different lakes across the state. And that went really well. In 1990, we added more parameters. So they started collecting more water quality information. In 2000, we added, or 2010, we really focused on aquatic invasive species and ramped up that. So now we have these various facets of citizen lake monitoring, including all those, plus native plant communities and additional aquatic invasive species. We have ice cover that many volunteers monitor, special projects relating to specific research projects with DNR scientists and university scientists. So there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle now, and our volunteers can choose whatever they're interested in collecting data on. Currently, we have about 1,000 volunteers per year, monitoring about 1,100 sites per year. You can see that number is higher for sites than volunteers, because some volunteers do monitor more than one site. And we always have this impressive number I like keeping track of at the end of each season. And currently we are about 200,000 water clarity measurements in the state since the program began in 1986. So we do have a very large data set of water quality information across Wisconsin's lakes. And that's why a lot of researchers across the nation, not just in Wisconsin, look to data that we have for Wisconsin lakes to better understand water quality trends and patterns throughout time. So in addition to that, other ways that the data is used from CLMN is often by lake associations themselves and by the volunteers. They share the data that they collect with their association at meetings, or things like this meeting tonight. Somebody might come on and share the information that they've collected. It goes to a statewide database, and then it is put into an annual report that is updated automatically every night. So if you enter data in today, you'll have a report that's updated tomorrow that summarizes all your data for the entire monitoring season. And that is really valuable for our DNR lake biologists. So if Resident Brad Steckert calls up the lake biologist and says, hey, I was over on Blue Lake fishing today, and I noticed the water clarity wasn't very good. And then last time I was here a few years ago, I thought I remembered it being much clearer than it was today. They have some information then to give them more of an educated response. So they can say, hey, we've got 12 years of consecutive water clarity data here on this lake, and I can tell you that the water clarity tends to fluctuate between 3 feet and 9 feet throughout an individual season. And it looks like it's about the same this year as it was a few years ago. So maybe you were here at a different time of the year. Whatever it may be, it gives them a lot of information to work with to better understand what someone's question might be and help them figure out an answer. Lake consultants use it all the time in lake management plans and other documents in their work. It helps to influence what kind of work might need to be done on the lake, and just educate the residents about trends over time. It provides a lot of evidence to evaluate changes. So a good example of that is Deer Lake up in Polk County. That's an example where the Lake Association has been active for decades, very active, and they've done a lot of monitoring up there and a lot of work to try to improve the water quality of the lake. I believe it started where people who had lived on the lake for a long time, since they were kids, they said, well, boy, I remember it being much clearer, better fishing, whatever it may be. And so they said, well, let's get together and try to bump up the water clarity and decrease the phosphorus loading to this lake and try to make it better. And they did things like putting in rain gardens and vegetated swales and native plants along the shoreline, and even going as far as buying small agricultural plots and turning them into prairies, taking gullies and stabilizing them and planting them with various native grasses and other plants. They took some very huge steps, and they kept monitoring, and they were able to show over time with this annual data that they were collecting that their water clarity almost doubled, or I think it actually more than doubled as they were tracking it. And it was a way to show people this is working. All these things that we're doing are really having an effect on the lake, and we can prove it with this information that we've been able to collect. And the last thing on the slide here is the water quality reporting. So the Department of Natural Resources is responsible for tracking water quality and assessing water quality of Wisconsin water bodies and reporting that information every 2 years to Congress and the Environmental Protection Agency. So a lot of our data from Citizen Lake Monitoring is used to complete assessments on lakes to officially assess their water quality and see if they are meeting the established water quality criteria that the Department of Natural Resources and EPA have set for water bodies. So there's all kinds of ways that the data is used, and we love to see the volunteers themselves finding other ways to use the data and share it with other people. So our volunteers in general have a love of lakes. They often have lived on a lake for a long time or have visited a lake for a long time, and they just want to learn more. I think about it like the neighbor that lives down the street that you lived by for 20 years and you've never talked to that person, and you finally do and realizes how interesting that person is. It's kind of, I've heard it described sort of that way by some volunteers, that I've lived here for 50 years. I never knew what that plant was that grows off my dock every year. I never knew that this kind of fish was in the lake, or these turtles over here are wood turtles or Blandings turtles, not just painted turtles or whatever. It's really fun to listen to people as they learn more about their lake and become even more passionate in the process. And these people also understand that water quality has a lot of impacts on not just property values, but their own health, mental health, physical health, the ecosystem health in general. So that's kind of the usual suite of characteristics of our volunteers. We did a survey in 2014 and again in 2019 about CLMN volunteers, and we asked all of them a bunch of questions, and you can see here how long some of them have been with the program. Lisa Conley, who's on the call today, is one of our 30-year volunteers. We have some that are still going from the beginning. I think we have 2 that are still monitoring from 1986. We have a lot of volunteers that are within the 1 to 10 year range here, but you can see a lot of our volunteers are involved for a very long time, tracking these data across time for very long time periods. So what do we do as staff? We have the statewide CLMN educator, that's me, and then we have the regional coordinator. So similar to Amy's model with the regional staff across the state, I also have regional coordinators that work out of regional DNR offices in, for example, Oshkosh and Green Bay and Waukesha. We provide the equipment and the training and the support for volunteers. There is no cost to anything. There were some costs when I started, but we were able to get rid of those by making some other changes with our budgets. So there is no fee for participating in Citizen Lake Monitoring aside from driving to the post office to mail a sample or minor things like that. And we help to summarize and interpret that data. So if you have questions about the data that you've collected, we help you interpret that, understand what that data means and what the trends look like, if there are any trends. And as I mentioned before, we have these data reports that are automatically summarized for you from the state database. So you can always go into a public facing website and you can find a report for that season. And you can also look back to any other season that you participated, or you can look at some lake down the road and see how that lake is doing. It's all available online, and I'm going to walk you through where to find that data in a few minutes here, because I get a lot of questions about where to find that data and things like that. So what the citizens do for us is they actually go out there and they collect the data. They are really the boots on the ground. They take the boat out and they collect water clarity data or water chemistry data or other things, and they report that information into the state database called SWIMS. It's the same place where our staff data goes. And the best part about that is that it's all considered together. We have a quality assurance program within Citizen Lake Monitoring that has allowed us to prove that volunteer collected data is every bit as good or better than staff collected data. So it's all considered together, and we don't say, if a scientist is looking for information for a study, we don't say, well, here's the high quality staff collected stuff, and then we've got this other group of volunteer collected data. It's all the same to us. We can demonstrate that the quality is there for all of it. And so we have this very, very nice collection of data collected by both staff and volunteers. So in some cases, they do have to process samples a little bit. So chemistry samples, a phosphorus sample is pretty simple. It's basically just pouring some lake water into a bottle and fixing it with a little bit of acid to preserve it. But chlorophyll sampling is a little bit more involved. There is a filtration process, and then the volunteer would mail the filter to the State Lab of Hygiene for analysis instead of just sending a water sample. So those are the main things that the volunteer citizens do. Our most common piece of citizen lake monitoring is water clarity monitoring. So that's using a Secchi disc, which is an 8-inch disc, black and white with a stainless steel weight on the bottom. So it falls straight through the water column, and you're measuring water transparency in the water. How far down in the water can you see that disc? And that's an easy indicator of water quality changes over time. So it's the thing that most of our volunteers do. It is part of water chemistry monitoring as well. So if they're doing chemistry, they're also taking water clarity measurements at the same time. And it is the most basic and inexpensive way for us to track water quality trends over time. So here you can just get an idea of what you're looking at when you measure water clarity. And if you're interested in learning more about that and seeing exactly what our volunteers do, we made a YouTube tutorial video on water clarity monitoring and water chemistry. So that's a separate video, but you can go to YouTube and you can just search water clarity monitoring. It's one of the first things that come up. And same thing with water chemistry monitoring. You can search that phrase and you can see that video as well. And we have aquatic invasive species monitoring videos that are finished. They have not been officially released yet. We're working on just a couple of minor hoops to jump through right now as far as approvals and things like that, but they are finished and they'll be up on YouTube a little bit later this winter. So one of the coolest things I think about citizen lake monitoring is the remote sensing ability that we have. So there are satellites up in space right now that are monitoring water clarity in Wisconsin. They basically take a picture of the landscape and they are able to interpret an estimation of water clarity and even some other things about lakes just based on that picture that they take of the landscape. And the way that works is that we have volunteers collecting data on the ground, which we call ground truthing data. It's basically real ground measurements by actual people. And that data is used to calibrate the models that refine the instruments on the satellite. So every time we provide more data to the satellite, it increases the accuracy of those models and of the instruments on the satellite. And at this point, we can get about a 1 foot accuracy of water clarity estimations from the satellite, which is pretty cool. It's something that far away could actually estimate water clarity on a lake on the ground. So that's one of the exciting things that our volunteers get to contribute to. Native aquatic plant monitoring is our least subscribed piece of citizen lake monitoring. It's not something that we have heavily promoted, and it's something that many volunteers are a little intimidated by because they don't consider themselves professional botanists or anything. So they're hesitant to offer to monitor aquatic plants because it's not really something that they're used to. It's something we'd like to expand more in the future. And the way that this works is that volunteers go around the lake and they can notice that some species look different than others. And the most basic part of native aquatic plant monitoring is just to collect a sample of everything that looks different. So if you can see that here's a lily pad, here's a fluffy plant, here's a really leafy plant, here's a tiny leafy plant, whatever you use to distinguish them, we just ask you to collect a sample and press it on a large sheet of paper. That could be an 11 by 17 piece of paper or even a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And you basically just collect a sample of each and either press them on paper or send me a picture. And you assemble a collection of the entire plant community that you are able to distinguish out in the lake. And you come up with a preliminary list. Here's the plants that exist in the lake. And you can send me the actual specimens or you can send pictures to me and then I can verify the identification for you and then provide you with the actual final list. And one of the best parts about this is, for me, is seeing these fun drawings. So a lot of the volunteers will create these drawings that depict where the certain species or certain categories of plants are located around the lake. And if they do this each year or every few years, they can kind of understand how things are changing. And if a certain bay is becoming much more dense with vegetation or certain plants are expanding. And another thing that happens is they often detect invasive species at low levels. And that's really the goal of aquatic invasive species monitoring, is finding these things early when they can be managed effectively and inexpensively. So this is an example from Shadow Lake in Wapaka County when I was helping a volunteer do some native aquatic plant monitoring out there. As far as we knew, there was not any Eurasian water milfoil in the lake, but as we were going through, just meandering around the lake in kayaks, we found this Eurasian water milfoil. This is kind of a strange photo. So it's actually half underwater, half above water with an underwater camera. And so, I mean, the seam where the water is, it's almost not even there. So it's kind of hard to understand what you're looking at here, but you can see this line right here is actually the surface of the water. But we found this very small population of Eurasian milfoil there. It was off of the public beach, and the city happened to staff lifeguards at the beach. And so the lifeguards actually assembled a little dive team, and the volunteers on the lake worked with the lifeguard team to dive down and remove the Eurasian milfoil from the lake. And really, this was only possible because we found it in a small population that could be manually removed without an immense level of effort. So moving on from there, we do aquatic invasive species monitoring, as I said, and including invasive plants like starry stonewort in the upper left there, Eurasian milfoil, hydrilla, purple loosestrife, and others. And if you're interested in purple loosestrife in particular, this is a beetle that we release into wetlands of Wisconsin. It's been used for a couple of decades now to control purple loosestrife. And the state program for purple loosestrife biocontrol, which is the name of this whole effort, is run by Jeannie Shearer out of UW Extension in Madison. So if you're interested in raising beetles to attack purple loosestrife, contact me or Brad or Jeannie Shearer at Extension, and we can help you get set up to do that if you'd like. You get to raise these cute little guys here. They only eat purple loosestrife and small kids, so we don't have to worry about them attacking other species. Just kidding, they don't attack children. But it's a fun program. It is actually a native pest of purple loosestrife in Europe, so it is not a native insect. It is one that USDA studied in its native range, in purple loosestrife's native range, to see what kind of insects were most stressful to purple loosestrife and most effective in controlling its populations. And then that insect was brought here to control purple loosestrife. Before it was released here, though, it was studied extensively to make sure that it did not eat other species. It's not like the Asian lady beetle that most people think of when they think of an insect biocontrol. It does not hibernate inside your house. It does not bite you or smell when it's squished or anything like that. It's a pretty harmless insect, except to purple loosestrife. And some invasive animals that we look for include rusty crayfish, zebra mussels, Asian clams, and banded mystery snails. Most of those are familiar to you in southeastern Wisconsin. They're all present in some lakes within that part of the state. These are some of the resources that we provide. The Early Detector Handbook is something that I developed in 2014 when I started in this position, and we do provide that for free, one copy per lake with the invasive species monitoring kit. The book that on the right is what Brad mentioned before. We don't provide that, but both of those titles are available through the Extension Lakes bookstore if you're interested in either of those. And then we provide things like webinars to keep our citizens up to date and keep them interested, or provide information on things that they are interested in. Most of the time, the webinars are developed with suggestions of topics from the volunteers. So I will ask, what do you want to learn more about? And they say, I want to learn about the different kinds of turtles that we have in Wisconsin. I want to learn about wetlands, or how groundwater contributes to lake levels, or PFAS, or whatever it might be. If whatever they'd like to hear about, they tell me, and then I go and find experts to talk about those topics. We offer other training opportunities, including the aquatic plant workshops that we hold in the summer at Kemp Natural Resources Station in Woodruff. We sometimes do a Southern training workshop as well, depending on staff availability in Madison. But you can come and learn about aquatic plants, and there's no obligation to you or anything. It's really just to train you on aquatic plant identification and learn more about aquatic plants in lakes. So we do a classroom portion and we do an on the water portion in canoes or kayaks or motorboats. Before COVID anyway, we had to put a stop to this for a couple of years, but we used to do the Citizen Lake Monitoring Lake Learning Day. And that was kind of like the webinars. It was all volunteer topics. They would tell us what they wanted to learn about. And the last one we did was salamanders and dragonflies and mussels were the three things that were nominated. So we had a mussel expert, we had a dragonfly expert, and we had a herptile expert. And we went out and we sampled salamanders underneath a log in an ephemeral pond, and we took nets out on a bog and we caught dragonflies as they flew by. We walked in the lake and we collected mussels, and of course we looked at a few aquatic plants because that was there. We looked at all kinds of fun stuff. It was a great time, and people got to just learn about the things that they are interested in. We have the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network website, which has all kinds of fun resources to learn more about lakes. We have an e-newsletter and regular electronic communications that go out, and we have the staff support. If you ever have questions, people email me at 11 o'clock at night, and they are surprised when they get an email back 2 minutes later. I have my email tied to my phone, and I will help you as quickly as I can, as quickly as I see that message. So we're here for you whenever you need help or have questions. Talking a little bit more about water chemistry monitoring. This is our second most subscribed part of Citizen Lake Monitoring. This is a little bit more involved, and it includes a phosphorus sample, a chlorophyll sample, water temperature profile, and then the water clarity reading as well. So this is a little bit more involved. You can see on the right side, that's the filter cup, which has a sample of lake water in it. You run that through the filter, which is this right here in the left photo. And what you get after you run all that water through is this stuff left over on the filter. So you can fold that up with your tweezers, put it into a little test tube or a centrifuge tube, and you send that off to the State Lab of Hygiene, and they take it from there. So all you are responsible for is just filtering that water. Instead of sending the actual water sample, we filter it first. The other parts are fairly easy as well. And again, you can see here's the centrifuge tube holding the filter. You can see all that's involved with water chemistry monitoring if you're interested in learning more by going to YouTube and searching for water chemistry monitoring, and you'll find this video there. The last thing I want to talk about was the data. So we have these annual reports that I mentioned are generated automatically through the database. So as soon as you get your data into the database, you will have an annual report produced the following day. And you can link to that through our website on the Extension Lakes website, or there's also a way to get there through the DNR website as well. I'm going to get rid of this window and just walk you through the actual website of how to find these reports. So I'm going to move this one out of here and we'll go here instead. You can see this DNR homepage now, Brad, right? Okay. So if you go up to the search bar up here and click on this magnifying glass, you can type in Citizen Lake Monitoring. And first thing that pops up is this one, Citizen Lake Monitoring Network, Wisconsin DNR. Click on that and it tells you about the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network. You can learn more about the remote sensing project with the satellites and all kinds of things like that. Or if you want to find the annual reports, you just go down here to graphs and data by county. Click on that and find your county. Go to Waukesha County here, and then you can find all the different lakes within Waukesha County that are participating in Citizen Lake Monitoring right now. You can sort this by the letter of your lake name if you want to quickly narrow down to a lake, or look and see if you only want to sort by recent data, But we can go, for example, here to Ashapun Lake, and we can find all the years that that lake has participated in citizen lake monitoring. And we can find an annual report for any year. Here's all the data that was collected. So we have Secchi depth, which is the water transparency level, and chlorophyll, total phosphorus, trophic state index. You notice there's a bunch of acronyms on here, and you may not understand what a lot of these things mean. If you go back a little bit, this is the very first thing I did when I got in this position in 2014. I made this interpretive guide to CLMN water quality reports, because when a lot of people look at this, they don't know what they're looking at. So you can look at that interpretive guide, and it walks you through each one of these cells here in the report and helps you understand what they mean. But we can see on this particular lake, there were 5 different readings. We had water clarity anywhere from 15 feet to 8 feet throughout the season. We have different nutrient levels here. We have a temperature profile all the way down to 35 feet, and we have dissolved oxygen levels that were recorded as well. You've got some comments here, and then we have a volunteer's name down here. So you can find that for any lake. If you want to see what Nate Rice has been up to, you could go check him out on Silver Lake and see all the different years that Nate and others have collected data on Silver Lake and what kind of information they're getting. So there's the annual report that I showed before. There's also this narrative report that helps to just give you a written summary of what the data look like right now. There's also a Secchi graph, so you can see over time since 1990, here's where the water transparency is. You could see down 14 feet average in 1990, and the average throughout time. You can see that it's pretty stable. It fluctuates a little bit year to year, but really the trend line is pretty much flat here. It's between probably 11 and 13 feet is pretty much the average here throughout time. And we can also see the trophic state. So this is looking at whether a lake is considered eutrophic, mesotrophic, or oligotrophic. And those are categories of lakes based on the nutrient concentrations in the water. This one here, the mesotrophic range here in the middle, you can see that it's pretty stable. All these different lines are different ways of measuring the trophic state based on water clarity with the Secchi disk, the phosphorus levels, and the chlorophyll levels. And you can see that they all pretty much agree with themselves here that it's right in the middle. It's a solid mesotrophic lake. It's very much right in the middle of that mesotrophic band here, which is good. So there's different ways of interpreting the data here, different ways that we summarize it for you in different ways. And again, if you have questions about these reports or these graphs, then you can always contact me or contact the regional coordinator for your area, which is Rachel, and I'll show you her contact information here in a minute. So going back to this, this is a few examples of the webinar series that we've offered for volunteers. So some of the different topics that you would expect to see, these are ones that we've done in the last couple of years. And then we have 2 that are still upcoming in 2022. If you'd like to learn more about the algae of lakes, Gina LaLiberty, who is the statewide algae specialist, is going to be talking to us on January 26th at 3 p.m. And we'll be talking about fisheries in the driftless region on February 17th at 6 p.m. So if you're interested in either of those, you can find the information on the Citizen Lake Monitoring Network website, on the Extension Lakes website, or email me, email Brad, he'll get a hold of me. We'll make sure that you get registered for those. They are free, they are virtual webinars, so you can join just like you joined today. All right, last slide here. Rachel Saber is the regional CLMN coordinator for Southeast Wisconsin. So if you're interested in getting involved in citizen lake monitoring, Rachel would be the person that would be providing you with your supplies and your training. So contact her if you're interested in getting started. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact me or visit our website here, uwsp.edu/uwexlakes. And you can click on the big Citizen Lake Monitoring Network logo to get to all the CLMN content. So with that, here's my contact information if you need to get a hold of me, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk tonight.
Thanks, Paul. That's really awesome. Every time I see the Citizen Lakes Monitoring Network data, there's a little bit like more accurate data or more, and it's just awesome every time. So that's really cool. There was a couple questions that came up and one compliment. One question was about Secchi disc readings. And that was, do you find Secchi disc readings consistently reflect water chemistry issues, particularly excess phosphorus or nitrogen? Or are there often diversions in your data set? For example, if the Secchi reading is poor, but the water quality is good. If they are not always aligned, do you find that it depends on the water body? And in certain bodies, are they always aligned? And I love that they asked that right before you showed that graph of the different, so maybe, I don't know if you want to go back and just show like one more example of what that looks like.
Well, I'm reading the question again in the chat here. So they don't always align. The one exception where that it often does not align with water clarity or water quality is where many of our northern lakes are very tannin stained. And so they have very brown, coffee colored water. The Secchi disc reading may not be all that good or all that high, but the nutrient levels are still quite low. And it's not that there's a high phosphorus level, it's just that there's a very dark staining to the water. In southeastern Wisconsin, it would be more likely that they do agree quite well. Many of the lakes in southeast Wisconsin are hardwater lakes. They have marl bottoms, and marl is a type of sediment that actually captures phosphorus as it forms, and it drops phosphorus out. And in the process, it improves water clarity as well, because it makes that phosphorus not available to algae. So I would say in general, in the southeastern region, they agree with each other very well. We consider, as far as the trophic state index graphs that I showed before that indicate eutrophic versus oligotrophic or mesotrophic, we consider chlorophyll A to be the most reliable indicator of trophic state. Secchi disc being probably the least reliable, but they're really not that much different. So when I say least and most, it's not like they're way off on different tangents. They agree with themselves pretty well. Hopefully that answers the question.
That was a great answer. Yeah, great answer. Also, Nate Rice was plugging your class, so your training. So it is outstanding. So is your book. It's really nice. The pictures are taken really well, and I mean, I've used it for years. I always get the new copy. I also shared Rachel's. So if anybody's interested in contacting Rachel, she's the local Citizen Lakes Monitoring Network person here. Feel free to use her email there. And then I also wanted to plug the Purple Loosestrife Biocontrol program that Paul was talking about. Jeannie Shearer spoke at our last quarterly meeting in April. So you can actually go and find that on the Lake Country Clean Waters website. If you're interested in doing the Purple Loosestrife program, you can at least watch her explain it and decide if you're interested in doing it. So that's another thing that I just wanted to put in there as well. And with that, I mean, not sure if anybody has any other questions for Paul. I think Amy left, but I think Patrick is still on. So if anybody has any questions. Oh, Jill, when propellers disturb the marl from the bottom of the lake, does that release phosphorus into the water again?
Good question. No, it is still bound to the marl particulates. They will settle back out and contain that phosphorus still. The phosphorus can be released from marl, but it is in anaerobic conditions. So if the bottom of a lake goes anaerobic, a lack of oxygen, then phosphorus can be released. And that is something we see in some lakes where we refer to it as internal loading of phosphorus. So a lake will go anoxic, it'll lose its oxygen at the bottom of the lake. And at that point, phosphorus can leach its way out of the sediments into that bottom layer of the lake. And in some lakes, that is a pretty substantial source of phosphorus loading into the lake each year, just recycling itself over and over. But just simple disturbance from a propeller or water disturbance, resuspending marl from the bottom of the lake does not actually release the phosphorus from the marl particles.
Great question. So if anybody else has any other questions for Paul or Patrick, anything with plans that the DNR are doing with aquatic invasive species this year or citizen lakes monitoring, I'll give everyone a couple minutes. I mean, this is kind of the time where after the meeting where everyone's kind of walking away and you want to go up to Paul and be like, hey, Paul, I still have this question for you. Since we're not able to do that, this is kind of the time to do that. So feel free to come off mute or write it in the chat if you have any questions.
Well, maybe I'll get to meet some of you at the Lakes Convention this April. We're still planning on being in person, COVID willing. We'll see what happens with that. But if you'd like to take the aquatic plant workshop, you can learn more about aquatic plants. I'll be helping to teach that. Or there's so much information to be learned at the Lakes Convention. So I would encourage many of you to go. And there is a virtual option as well if you're more interested in joining virtually this year.
Yeah, I'm excited for Lakes Convention this year. Oh, Jim asked, does the DNR plan to update the FAQ on the website for starry stonewort? It's might be more of a Patrick oriented question.
Yeah, as far as I know, not currently. I think those were produced in, I want to say like the spring of 2020. So no plans currently to update those, but we are, very much still kind of evaluating starry stonewort and all the things that go into that. But I would still reference those for kind of the most current state of affairs, if you will, for starry.
Great.
Great, thanks.
There is a group called the Starry Stonewort Collaborative that I've been involved with since its inception in 2015, I think it was, or 14. The collaborative itself was hosted by a college in New York, and I believe they lost their grant funding. But I think their website is still up, and they had a large clearinghouse of information on starry stonewort. So you might search Starry Stonewort Collaborative and read up on all the different materials there.
I think I heard that website's going to be live until maybe through this year or at least next fall. So maybe also just, download it off there or something if you want it for the future.
Yes, sorry, I was reading this next question from Tom. When we talk about marl, I'm assuming we're not referring to the sediment that is much lighter than marl, correct? And the sediment can release phosphorus more readily?
So I'm assuming that Tom's referring to organic sediments that often mix with marl or settle on top of the marl or alongside it. You can get release of phosphorus from sediments. Again, it is often driven by anaerobic conditions, so that's going to be much more of an issue if you have anaerobic conditions. I think that's probably what he's referring to there. And yeah, the organic sediment can be much more easily suspended. It's very flaky often and will suspend very easily. The marl is more of the gray, fluffy sediment that just creates a gray cloud in the water if you dive near it or you have a propeller near it or something like that.
Nice, great clarification there. Awesome. Well, with that, I'm kind of looking at people's faces to see if anyone looks inquisitive. Daryl looks happy, but not inquisitive. So I'm going to stop recording now.